I'm Christopher Warnock of Renaissance Astrology, and this video is called The Hunter of Souls, How Scams Work According to the Mass Magic of Giordano Bruno. So this video was kind of inspired. I was reading this article in Bloomberg that was talking about this incredible, wide-ranging scam of authors. And so what they would do is basically find people that wanted to publish their books, but also people that wanted to make it into a screenplay, and they were able to extract just amazing amounts of money from people. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, this is a scam. It was a multi-million-dollar scam. I think it was the perpetrators were in the Philippines, but I think a lot of they were dealing with the United States or Europeans or whatever in terms of that. So and you look around and there's so many internet scams. And in fact, there's a huge amount of scams, but also a lot of even organized crime involvement. I mean, the border, Myanmar, and the Shan states in China. There are people that get kidnapped from China, and they're basically held in these camps and forced to do these various internet scams. And there's just an incredible wide range of these scams. So the question I started thinking about is how do you able to? I mean, they're $1 billion industry basically, these scams. So again, you look at this and there's really not, other than what people are gullible or something, but as far as the nuts and bolts of how this sort of scam works, I think a very useful perspective for looking at that is a mass magic perspective. And mass magic is magic that is essentially, you almost call it mental magic, but it kind of can be described as magic that affects a lot of people. And advertising, marketing, these are all examples of mass magic. I mean, there's a lot of mass magic going on, politics, whatever, but we are not, we're not really conscious of it being magic. Let's say, oh, that's just so-and-so. We have this reductive approach. Ion Coulianu, who wrote Magic in the Renaissance, Eros and Magic in the Renaissance is the name of the book. He says that modern magicians have now disguise themselves basically as advertising, marketing, propaganda, cryptography. These are the modern examples of mass magic. And his basically source for mass magic is Giordano Bruno. Giordano Bruno is a Renaissance mage, esoteric philosopher, supposed martyr for science, absolutely ridiculous. That the scientists will do that. And Giordano Bruno was in no way a scientist. He was burned at the stake for heresy, for all his magical beliefs. And this idea that it's something about a heliocentric, astronomy, not at all. I mean, he was very straight up, basically, and publicly trying to do magic, and the Inquisition in Italy just wouldn't put up with it. So he was a martyr for magic, not a martyr for science. But anyhow, Giordano Bruno, his focus was on vincula or bonds, and he has two books, both on binding, and also on magic, that talk about this mass magic. So the mass magic is done basically through the senses, but particularly through speech and images. Okay, and then the mage must be particularly super aware of emotions, how to evoke them, but also simultaneously not under the sway of emotions themselves. And so Bruno doesn't give practical details, but he says, for each individual type of person and each individual person, different images, different sounds, different things are going to evoke the result that you want. So if we look at the scams from a mass magic sort of point of view, the key is then to find the emotional needs of the victim, okay? And this is the emotional weaknesses. And this is the scam approach of it. I mean, you can have a positive manipulation as well. I mean, this idea that, I'm going to be honest and everything. Honesty is itself a stance. Honesty is itself, a manipulation in that sense. I mean, a positive one. So, on one hand, you have Hitler, who's an incredible practitioner of mass magic, his incredible sway. You look at his speeches, the Nazi Party, the Nuremberg rallies, and you also have people like Martin Luther King and Gandhi, who again use speech and images. If you think of Birmingham, the image of the police dogs attacking the civil rights protesters, incredibly powerful images that evoke, very strong emotions in people, and for a positive purpose in that case, for justice, for civil rights, for equality, all very positive. Um, so, with the scam part of it, what we're doing is we're not trying to inspire people to positive so much. Generally, we're trying to prey on people's weaknesses. Okay, and the key then is to find the emotional needs of the victim. And so the author scams, if you look at those, I mean, because I've had people, and again, people ask me horary questions like, will my book be successful? In other words, can I write my novel and then I can sell it to a publisher and then I can just retire and live off the royalties? I mean, highly, highly unlikely 20 to 30 years ago, almost impossible now, I mean, and so the author scams, the old style is vanity press. And vanity press is where you go and someone prints up the book for you and then you got to sell it yourself. And of course you can't sell any copies of it. The way they make money now is the vanity press stuff. What they'll do is they'll edit the book for you. They'll do the design for you. I mean, that's not totally crazy and it's going to be expensive to do that, but they're actually producing something tangible for you. Then they start getting the marketing stuff. Well, that's starting to get scammy. Okay, and then when you go over the line there, then you're completely scamming people with the marketing. And then they'll do things like saying, oh, hey, Netflix has contacted me. They want to take your book and turn it into a Netflix series. They're going to pay millions of dollars, but you have to pay these fees up front. You have to do this. You'll have to get, pay to have it in bookstores. You have to pay for these ads in these various magazines. And they're able to extract huge amounts of money from people. And so it's interesting. A couple of the people that were quoted in the article, when they finally woke up and tried to stop, what they said was that they got bombarded, is that they were getting emails and contact constantly and getting pressured into it, and they would continue. And then they'd even say that the scammers would start taunting them and saying, well, if you want to stop, it's just because you're weak, you're unsuccessful. Obviously, the kind of person that's going to be a failure, you don't want to be successful. Some people even got sort of almost gangsterish and started threatening people. So, very, very problematic situation to get into. But it is interesting. What's interesting about it is the amount of money that they were able to get because they understood so carefully, so clearly, the weaknesses of the people. In this case, the author scam. I mean, there's desire for the ego. Having your book, as a being popular. Obviously, there's a desire for that. There's a sense of success from that. There's fame and the money. I mean, one guy was talking about he was taking all his farm checks and sending it off to this, and he was thinking, well, this is going to make so much money from Netflix that I won't have to worry about the fact that I'm basically starving the finances on my farm. And so what's interesting too about nowadays is that we have the technology is allowing us to have incredibly powerful mass magic. Because like I said, if you're talking about Renaissance, you're having an image, it would have to be a painter to make it, and it would be a static image. I mean, now we can do video, you can have moving images, right? And you can have sound along with them, and you can have this incredible, powerful images. I mean, I isolate myself. I have ad blockers and everything. I never see any ads. It's incredibly powerful stuff. And people tend to say, oh, it's, I don't pay attention to advertising. If it's not aimed at you, it's not gonna have so much. It has a cumulative effect, but it's gonna have a strong effect. But if stuff that's aimed at you that sort of penetrates your defenses is going to have a very powerful effect on you. I mean, it's just automatic. And so what's interesting about, like I said, is that the internet has worldwide coverage and you can specialize. So you can have these incredible, author scams. I mean, how many people are going to be susceptible to that in your city? But if you have a worldwide, scope, and you can put the sort of links out there that people are going to be clicking on, you can do blog stuff, you can be looking out for people and you can, and you can be lurking on groups, for example, internet groups. Finding, you've got worldwide coverage in terms of finding people. So you can have very specialized scams that only attract a certain type of people, but those people, again, it's like, bait to the hook. Like a fly fishing. You get the right fly, you tie it properly, and you flick it around and that fish is going to bite on it. And that's essentially what these scams are doing. And so what I would say about this is that don't have the illusion that you cannot be, essentially what you've got is this incredibly powerful delivery system. And if you thought about it from another standpoint, like a meme standpoint, you could think of it as an infection, And if you're susceptible to a particular meme, you can be affected by it. And so the modern technology with the vision plus the sound, super highly immersive, these very powerful images and music, speech, etc., delivered directly to you and you're susceptible to it, incredibly powerful delivery system right at your weakest point. So what I would say about this is that Anyone can be conned. No one, including me, is immune from this. All the scammers have to do is to find that right button. Everyone's is going to be susceptible to their individual emotional weaknesses. So that's, I think, the first thing to recognize is this idea that, oh, I'm immune to this, it's not going to happen to me. It could definitely happen to you, and you have to be aware of the possibility. And anytime you're accessing the internet, anytime you're looking at stuff on the internet, you've got to recognize it's potentially could be a scam. I'd say, as a practical standpoint, I think what I would recommend is just be extremely careful about paying out money. I mean, I certainly never accept any phone or door-to-door solicitations. I don't, I get emails and just delete everything like that. I mean, if you're in a situation where you're going to pay out some money, you want to check with the advice of a person that you trust on any large transaction or any unusual transaction. Okay, that's what I would say. Just on any. Does this seem weird? I had someone do a horary recently on one of these scam things, and I mean, it was very obvious to me. I did the horary and it came up scam, but just the way that they laid out the scenario. This is one of those things where someone from the military had contacted them and they needed some money to ship their metals or something. And I said to him, well, here's the problem with that. The Postal Service provides APO, which is the military postal stuff for the military, every military base. And I said, it's at domestic prices. Okay, so it's extremely cheap for them to ship stuff. So the fact that they're overseas doesn't make any difference in terms of shipping. They can ship that really cheaply. So the person was like, "Oh, okay, thanks." So I thought he said that was kind of the final nail in the coffin in terms of that. But I mean, the other thing, you just Google stuff. I mean, someone's giving you this line. It's very much from a standpoint. But the thing is, what's happening, like with a romance scam, is that people are just so caught up with it. They just can't help it. They don't have the control over it. And so ultimately, I think the root solution is awareness. Okay, so I used to say that's the first step, but I think that's all that's necessary. You need to be aware that you could be scammed and there's scams out there, and then also aware of your own weaknesses. Okay, and if something's punching your buttons, even if it's a legitimate transaction, like I said, if you're going on Amazon and you're buying something, you're spending less money on Amazon Prime Day because of an emotional need, that's problematic as well. I mean, it doesn't even have to be in the scam level. So, but what I thought was particularly, like I said, interesting about this, I really like that hunter of souls concept, because that's exactly what these people are doing. They're sitting off in wherever they are, and they're looking through, they're very carefully hunting through for weaknesses and probing you. And if they find someone's weak, boom, they zap them and they just reel them in. And people are getting, like I said, hundreds of thousands of dollars from some of these scams. So what I would say about this is that I'm not trying to say this is the truth, or this is the explanation, or this is the sole correct answer. What I'm doing is saying it's a perspective, okay? I think it's a useful perspective to look at this mass magic and this, like I said, Coulianu's Eros and Magic in the Renaissance, as well as Giordano Bruno's on bonding, and look at that as this is a way of understanding reality, not some academic thing about what happened 500 years ago, but something that actually has a lot of application now, because we live in this world of magic. I mean, what I would say about it's a bit like binoculars, okay? And it was funny because I was thinking about it as a metaphor, and I looked it up as far as the the different types, and you need a precise focus for different uses. So for example, the type of binoculars you need for bird watching are different from the ones for sporting events, for concerts, etc. And I put a link in there, and they've got a whole chart about all the different kinds of binoculars. Essentially what you're getting here is a different perspective, okay? And you just, with them, find the perspective that is most useful and most practical for your circumstance. And that's what I would say here is that lots of models, lots of perspectives. I don't see a lot of useful information about what the cause of this, the overall, or how this, these cons work. It's a lot of sort of like, stories about people and watch out, but not, I think, a lot of a way of understanding, well, how is it that this works? Now, I haven't gone into a lot of practical detail because this is, in a lot of ways, black magic. And be very careful about it. I mean, like I said, there are positive practitioners that have gone to your Martin Luther King, but there's a whole lot of other people out there that are really manipulating people through it. Like I said, you think of politicians, you think of marketing and advertising. We are incredibly enmeshed in mass magic 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the society is absolutely awash in it at the same time as not thinking it's all scientific. And that's they say that the greatest trick of the devil was convincing people he didn't exist at all. And again, we're in that situation with the magic. So again, the solution, I think, is to be aware, first of all, of your own weaknesses, and then to be aware also of the amount of manipulation and magic that's going on through this. So check that out, and hopefully you will not be a victim of the Hunters of Souls.